Long before China began using N95 masks and COVID-19 vaccines as part of its diplomatic efforts, it used pandas. The furry bears have been used by China to generate goodwill with other countries for more than 1,000 years. During the Tang Dynasty, Chinese Empress Wu Zetian presented Japan with 2 pandas. During the modern era, in 1941, just before the United States entered World War II, Beijing sent 2 cuddly black and whites to the Bronx Zoo as a thank you gift. The practice hit its stride during the Cold War. Mao Zedong sent pandas to China's communist allies, Russia and North Korea, in the 1950s. After U.S. President Richard Nixon's trip to China in 1972, Beijing gave the United States 2 giant pandas. Nixon said of the pandas' impending U.S. arrival, "It's going to be a hell of a story." He was right. More than 20,000 people visited the pandas the first day they were on display at the National Zoo in Washington in 1972, the first of 1.1 million visitors during the first year. The gift inspired British Prime Minister Edward Heath to ask China for pandas for the London Zoo during his 1974 visit to China. The panda adoration inspired the World Wildlife Fund to adopt the bear as its logo. In 1984, China changed its panda policy as environmental groups began to list the bears as an endangered species. Beijing switched to lending the bears instead of gifting them and made it clear that any cubs born overseas belonged to China. During the 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, the United States paid $50,000 a month to borrow pandas. Now, zoos around the world typically pay up to $10 million for a 10-year loan period. The animals bring zoos millions in revenue each year. When new pandas arrived at the National Zoo in Washington in 2001, the zoo, which charges no entry fee, nearly doubled its merchandise and food sales. The animals are also an enormous expense, however. Apart from China's loan charge, pandas cost a zoo roughly $500,000 a year in care, National Geographic reports. That is more than 5 times the cost of the next most expensive animals, elephants. The costs add up because pandas eat special bamboo, live in custom-built enclosures, and often require in vitro fertilization treatments to produce panda cubs. Chinese officials have acknowledged that pandas' popularity has aided diplomatic efforts. The Chinese ambassador to the United States said in 2013, "There are actually 2 Chinese ambassadors in Washington, me and the panda cub at the National Zoo." An Oxford University study in 2013 found that China gave pandas either to Asian countries with which it had recently signed trade agreements, or to nations that had supplied it with natural resources and technologies. The study also found that China would recall its pandas to show disapproval. In 2010, 2 US-born panda cubs that were due to return to China were put on a flight just days after US President Barack Obama defied China's wishes by meeting the Dalai Lama. Recently, as tensions between the United States and China have been strained by a range of issues, China renewed the National Zoo's panda loan for 3 more years, but called for them to be returned in 2023. Pandas in the southern U.S. city of Memphis, Tennessee, have come under scrutiny after Chinese social media posts went viral, claiming that the animals looked unwell. Memphis zoo officials have denied the bears are sick and say they are checked by veterinary teams every day. Beijing controls all the world's pandas, which are native only to south-central China's mountain ranges. The bears also used to inhabit lowland areas, but their terrain has become more restricted because of farming and development. An estimated 1,800 pandas live in the wild in China, while 600 pandas live in zoos or breeding centers around the world. The animals are no longer endangered, but are listed as vulnerable.